I'm from Tripura.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Then I think we should be starting.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't know if you have done this in your UG classes or not. This particular literary criticism and theory.
Okay.
But have you
Mhm.
done something of this during your UG days?
No, I did my master's in English. I've done it, and I've enrolled this because I just wanted to get some additional information. I wanted to gain more knowledge of this subject, so I enrolled for this again.
Okay, okay. Then I think you know some basic idea about literary theory and criticism, and
Yeah.
actually this is exactly what you are going to do is we are going to understand from a bird's eye view the whole perspective behind the body of literature. Now, by literature,
Okay.
I mean the different genres like novel, short story, poetries. Okay,
Okay.
so we are going to
Mhm.
see, theorize all these things, or we
Okay.
can say that why we are reading this, what is the importance of literature, of the different genres, and how we can apply different perspectives from our day-to-day life into
Okay.
those literatures. Okay, the
Yeah. Yeah.
different genres of literature.
Okay.
Just give me 2 minutes time. I'll start.
Okay.
Just give me 2 minutes.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. So before we go into the into the depths of criticism, before we understand what is criticism, what do they stand for, and what is the importance of criticism in literature, what is the importance of theory in literature. Before we go into that, first we'll see what is exactly literature. Now, if in a broad sense in my class, if I ask my students what is literature, in a class of not exactly literature students, but overall from different streams when people come and students come, and if you ask them what is literature, we might get varied answers. Like they will say that, you know, yeah, yeah. Please do keep your mic off. When needed, you can unmute yourself and you can speak. Okay. Now, what I was saying, yes, if we as teachers, if we ask class full of students, what is literature? So we expect different answers. Like somebody will say that any piece of writing is literature. Like for example, if you see, if you buy a medicine and you get a small pamphlet where lots of description is written regarding that particular medicine, so those things means what to take, precautions and side effects, whatever is written there about the medicine. So that also can be called a piece of literature. Okay, in a very broader sense, because it is trying to say something about that particular product. Or for example, if you see Maggie noodles, and if you see the wrapper of Maggie, one small example I'm giving you from our day to day experience. If you see the wrapper of Maggie, And if you see, the things, instructions written about Maggie, how to prepare, so in a very broader sense, you can call that also a piece of literature, because it is trying to describe, tell you what is exactly Maggie made up of, what are the ingredients used, and how you're going to prepare it. So, in a very broader sense, you can call this literature. But as students of literature, we cannot give such a vague terminology for literature. For us, literature comprises of different genres of writing, like poetry, drama, short stories, novels. They are called literature. Okay. So, and these writings are taken, are a kind of inspiration from our day to day life and day to day experiences. If you read novel, like presently I'm reading Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. So, what am I trying to read there? Through that book, through Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, I'm trying to find out exactly who is this protagonist called Anna Karenina. Then I try to see what is the socio-political condition of that time. Where is that novel based on? That is in Russia. So and it is written from a very very apt communist point of view. So I try to see different pictures from out of that novel. Okay, so what we see is that it is a representation. It is the socio-political representation mainly of the time, and it is taken from the point of view of the author. And you cannot say that if it is taken from the point of view of the author, so it is meant only for author or only for Russia. No, it has got a universal appeal. All of us, any one of us, if we read from any corner of the world, we will be able to, what do you say? We will be able to form a contact, form a similarity bit. We can connect. Okay, so that piece of work is called literature. If you are a student of literature, you will understand literature in this way. Okay, so there are many critics, there are many writers who give their own definitions of literature. Okay, so but whatever you say, you have to remember that in literature is very closely related to to the writings of poetry, fiction, drama. But can you say exactly from where did we see a high rise of literature? You cannot exactly find the timeline of literature. Where did it or start, or when did it take birth? No one can say that. But if you read a bit of history of literature, you will see that English literature, particularly, it originated from religion, from mainly Christianity. Okay, because earliest literature was very much connected with church. Okay, but gradually, when you see this print industry developed in England, printing started. Okay, and these literature, they started getting a hard bound form because of printing. And you can see that this is connected with our capitalism also, idea of capitalism, or the idea of market economy. When books started to get printed, they started to sold in the market, and a price came out of these books. Okay, so at that time you see a high rise of written pieces of literature of these different dramas. And then when you see the machine age came, when the industrial revolution came in England, so books got got a excuse me, books got a high capitalistic value. They started to get printed in huge amounts, they started to get sold in the market, and books became very handy for even the middle class people. Okay, so this way you can see the culture of reading literature rose mainly from the period of industrial revolution. Means middle class also got the chance of reading. Else it was only high class who got the opportunity of reading. But now when the printing media came, we see a lot of reading from the middle class. Okay. and they started to read it during their leisure time. Now, like you see, is the rise of a mobile era. Like if you see, when you go out, you see people just opening their mobile phones and doing what and what not. In those days, the time followed by the industrial revolution era, you will see they called it a kind of human opium. These books, these novels, these different genres of literature, they were called human opium. People were so much addicted to books that that wherever you move in Europe, especially, you will see people getting a book in their hand and reading. Okay, now this is literature, and my students, my learners will also agree that it is, literature is very enjoyable to read. There are stories, there are poetries, there are feelings, there are emotions. So it is a, if you are not a student of English literature or any literature, just a student, suppose of biotechnology or any other branch, they also read literature for their pleasure, isn't it? But what is then criticism? Okay, so if there is no story, there is no emotion. What is criticism? A very easy, a very lame example I can give you is that, suppose you see a movie. Mm, Recently, I don't know what is going on in the movie theaters, but suppose you see a very recent movie. You get back home, you talk among your family members that this aspect was nice, the protagonist was intense, the feeling was very intense, okay, the thoughts were intense. Or suppose when you did not like it, you said that the hero looked like a fool, like a joker. So you try to interpret it. Okay, you try to analyze that movie. अगर ऐसा है तो क्यों है? अगर ऐसा नहीं है तो क्यों है? So you try to decipher different feelings out of that movie. Okay, so that is exactly what we do is criticism. When you try to analyze, okay, that is called criticism. Okay, and I know very lame man's term. All right. So this is how usually we define literature. But when you go into literature, you need certain words, jargons in order to define what literary criticism is. Okay. So you see, when it is concerned to literary criticism, and when it is concerned to we students of literature talking about criticism, then how will we define it? When you see these different poets, okay, you see that sometimes the poets are critics themselves, means they talk about their own writing. Suppose they they try to analyze what they try to explain what they have done. Or there are critics also who talk about suppose there's a new release, a new publication of a good novel, and critics will write, they will try to give their point of view, their opinion, their own criticism, whether they liked the reading, to what extent is it important for a society to read the book. They'll give a complete analysis. So that is what is criticism. So if you see, there are many writers, there are many critics who have written excellent criticisms. Okay. Sometimes they have written criticism on the whole body of literature also. Like you can see Wordsworth, Matthew Arnold. They are the pioneering figures of literary criticism. Matthew Arnold, Wordsworth. They have actually given a form and substance to the whole body of literary criticism. Okay, and we read them. It is even there in the syllabus to be taught, because students find perspectives from that criticism. They learn actually what is literature from these works of criticism, like defense of poetry. Okay, this piece of criticism, here you will see a lot of perspective you will gain as to why you should read literature. Okay, and I think you already know many of these critics, like Sydney. You'll be reading now, uh, Shelley. In the essays, they are not only poets, they are not only good writers, but also they are good critics. Okay, Now they are from recent times. If you see earlier times, they were classical critics also of the Greek and Roman time. Hmm. And these writers we will be discussing now, Plato, Aristotle will be reading. You will see how they, how they sometimes attacked literature, and then some of them defended the position of literature. They also tried to defend the position of poets in the civil society. Now, you find that there are different classes of people doing different work. Okay, for the better output of the resource of our place. Okay, like for example, there are doctors, there are engineers. Okay, um, there are artisans, मिस्त्री काम करते हैं, menial workers है. All right. So there is another class of people who are poets. So in those ancient times, when people were divided into different categories according to their skills, so they were kings, they were rulers, they were productive people, farmers. Okay, those who did productive work. But what about poets? So there was a lot of criticism about the existence of poets. Some said that no, poets are mad people. Okay, they're mad people, so uh, do not become too cautious about them. So this is actually criticism. Okay, and this is what Plato initiated. Then he said that no, either they should change their skill, otherwise this being a poet is of no use. It is of no resource. Then gradually they found out, with the help of this critical analysis, the importance of poet, the importance of literary people, the importance of creative people in the society. Okay, suppose if I tell you, people those who study biology, they will future in future they'll go to some research work. They might find out some biological researches which will be important for the society. There are people of geography who read about lands, about locations, about our atmosphere. Okay, so they will go and they will be of some good to society. But there's a question about literary people. What good they are about society? Why are we there? Okay, why are we people, English teachers there, or literature teachers there? What good we are to society? Okay, so there's always a question, and there is always an answer for that, which we'll go and discuss. Okay. So here you see in the early civilizations of classical Greek and Roman, they some of them were very critical about the position of the poets in a civil society. Some of them attacked the position of the poets, and many defended also, that we are going to read. So in those very earlier times, for the this word criticism, actually this word criticism was not there. They used to say aesthetics or poetics to criticism. Okay, so criticism word was not coined until a little late. Till I think mid 18th century, sorry, mid 19th century, we exactly got the word criticism. Before that, they used to call it aesthetics or poetics, hmm, instead of calling criticism. Gracie, are you able to understand what I'm telling? Because Gracie, there's no story here like we have in novels or dramas or poem full of feelings. It is not there. So it is just a dry thing. Gracie, is it all right? Are you able to understand? Are you there, Gracie? Anyway, let me continue. Gracie, if you can hear me, you can just respond, or you can just unmute yourself and let me know. Um, because I can't hear from you. Okay, yeah, yeah, you can hear me, right? So you need to understand, Gracie, because from easy things we are going little to complicated things, and it will be better if you just unmute yourself and say yes or no. That will be better for me. Anyway, so um, just a second. Okay, you are not able to unmute yourself. It's okay. But if there is a problem, let me know. I might not be able to see your messages. I don't know. Just unmute yourself. Say something, and then mute yourself. I'll check your message. Otherwise, I'm not able to understand if you're messaging me while taking the class. Anyway, yes, these were what we exactly start with criticism. More things are to follow. You will understand as we move on. Now, what is then theory? Now, this is what we understand about criticism. That yes, when we are analyzing, when we are trying to be critical about certain piece of literature, then that becomes the criticism. And there are very famous criticisms. Sometimes we say that these criticisms by Matthew Arnold or by Wordsworth, they sometimes surpass literature itself. It is so refined, the criticism. Okay. But overall, if you read criticism, you will find they're giving a direction also towards our reading. Okay. Now, if this is criticism, what is theory? Sometimes we get confused between to find out the difference between uh, theory and criticism. Okay. Now, criticism, a theory is actually, if we speak, uh, a theory is actually some principle. Okay, some principle on which certain part of literature is based on. I'll tell you in broadly, you can understand it better. Like suppose how I'll tell you. Hmm. Now you see that certain theories are constructed. Okay, theories are not there. Okay, they are constructed by people. Okay, and they are based on some particular principles, as I told you, and they try to explain to us what certain ideas, certain principles. Hmm. And they are a very sensible type of writing which are based on certain uh, dogmas, or they are based on certain religions, or they are written on the basis of some particular political impacts. Okay. Now this is a little bit different. This is quite different from what we see in criticism. Theories are actually, you see that mm, certain applications which are there in life. Okay. And which are there in life, and we use it in our writings, also in our novels. Okay. So in our art is actually what? It is an inspiration from a day to day life, from a normal life. Certain inspirations are there. Okay. So when we are taking some inspirations, at the same time, knowingly or unknowingly, the author takes those theories, the principle of those theories also. Okay. So I'll try to make sense out of this. I'm explaining this to you. Theory actually deals with a great number of issues. Okay. So where does this theory actually belong? This theory actually is there, uh, in the author's perspective. This theory is also there in the mind of the reader. Okay. This thing is there in both, in the reciprocal people. Okay, in both, in the author also, in the readers also. Theory, the understanding of certain theories already there. Okay. And what are these? I'll tell you. these theories actually have certain very objective, very specific meaning. Okay. Uh, and also, these theories are related to certain philosophical issues. Theories. Okay. Now, when you talk about some judgment, when you talk about certain intellectuality, okay, you are giving a general theory. Okay, you are trying to suggest a general theory if you're talking about certain kind of judgment, certain kind of intellectuality, mm, in the society. Like when you talk about aesthetic judgment or moral judgment, that is a theory. That is the assumption which is already there in your society. Basing on that assumption, you are drawing it into your writing, your piece of work. Moral judgment, a very simple thing I'm telling you. Okay, when you read a novel, um, certain uh, you know at the end of every good piece of writing, you can see that good over wins over evil. So that is what is moral judgment. So in that novel, you say that when the perspective, the story is about the victory of the good over evil, then the theory that the author used is based on moral judgment. So moral judgment here becomes the theory. Okay. So what is the general difference between theory and criticism? Okay, so you can say that theory is actually practice. Theory is whatever is practiced in real life. Okay, in society, that which is practiced is theory. Okay, so in theory, that in whatever is done in practice in your society, when you try to find that particular assumption in your written work, so the theory you have used from practice to the theoretical reading. Okay, so and now what does literary theory mean? Now literary theory actually means that there are certain, as I told you, practices, like for example, feminism, very easy thing. Now we are all of us, we very closely understand feminism. This is a theory. Okay, feminism is a theory because this kind of idea is practiced in the society. Okay, females want to empower themselves, they want to come out of their domestic lives, they want to claim themselves. Okay, they want to hold a position in society. So that is a theory which is there in the society. Okay, this is the practice that females are now they are resisting their gender based stereotypical work. They are trying to come out from those cocoons and they want to claim themselves in the society. So what they are practicing is feminism. When that idea of feminism, when you find it in a novel, okay, where woman is fighting a lot for her position in the society, what do you see? You will say that yes, I found through my reading there is a lot of feminist theoretical point of view. This is how you define a particular theory, literary theory. Could you understand? Am I clear with you? I'm trying to be,
Yes, ma'am.
uh,
Yes, yes,
uh,
I can hear you. Yeah,
uh,
I'm here.
yes, yes, yes. You have written already a system of ideas used to explain. Yes, exactly. You
Yes,
got
ma'am.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
So through my exam, when I'm teaching, I'm not able to see your messages. Anyway,
Okay, ma'am.
uh,
Yeah.
because I'm in a flow, and I try to
Yeah.
make things easy so that you can understand. So I think you have
Yes.
understood now. Like we have
Yes, yes,
Marxist
ma'am.
theories.
Mm-hmm.
Marxism is there. There are different types of theories that we'll be going through in the upcoming lines.
Okay.
Um, hmm. Now, uh, there are theories. Now you can see that there is a high rise of these theories. Many theorists have chalked down for us uh, different theories and different aspects of those theories. They have laid down the rules how to understand and how to read those theories. Okay, so there are certain uh, ideas, concepts, there are certain tenets of theory. Okay, that I'll tell you, that some theories are there, some points are there which you must remember while reading theory. Okay, certain significant points you have that you must remember when you are reading theory, when you are trying to understand theory. First of all, it is said that when you see a good piece of literature, good piece of literature means the book, irrespective of it being a comedy or a tragedy or whatever, you say that you have enjoyed. Okay, you have enjoyed means there is lot of literary perspective, no doubt, but there is a storyline, there's a beautiful plot, there are characters which are able to move you, you could connect. So you said that no, this is a timeless work. It has got universal appeal. Okay, so that kind of masterpiece, take for example, easy example, Shakespeare's um, Hamlet, or Shakespeare's King Lear. Okay, if you read, you can easily say that yes, this is timeless. This is not for one age, but this is for all time to come. Okay, so it means what? uh, Theory is trying to suggest. Okay, theory lays down before you the certain rules, certain regulations. If you follow them, you will be able to differentiate between the timeless with the cheap books. Okay, so it says that the literary value is, the literary value is helped to get enriched with the help of theories. Theory gives you proper direction, okay, in order to scan, in order to understand the good ones from the rest. Then what other tenet is there, another socio what other significant point is there? Literary theory literary theory tries to tell you that there are certain texts which have their own meanings. Okay, they have their own meanings within itself, and they do not require any elaborate process. Okay, whether you are reading a political novel, whether you are reading autobiographical novel, okay, whether you are reading just take it for example, romantic novel, if you are reading, then these texts, they have their own meanings. Okay, and you don't need different contexts. How should I explain? It is trying to say the theory, there's a theory. It says that when you're reading a piece of literature, that literature is complete in itself. You don't need any other points of references. Okay, you have to read, understand it in its own way, and enjoy the reading. That is actually the essence of literature according to literary theories. Now, then other significant point is that when you if you want to understand certain text properly, then forget the context. Now, what is context? Context is when you are trying to understand the author's background, when he was born, when he died, to whom did he marry. Don't see all those things. Okay, don't try to grow for more and more information. No, try to read that literary text as it is, according to your understanding. Okay, don't grow for other peripheral things. No, read it as it is, enjoy it as it is. Okay, and then these theories also give many other significant importance. It says that he says that these theories say they say that when you're reading literature, your purpose should be to get some enchantments of life. Okay, means when you're reading the book, piece of literature, you must understand human values out of it. That is the most significant point for reading literature, that you should understand the human values inculcated in those books. Okay, and that you must try to understand, you must try to lay emphasis on. Most important thing is it tries to give you some human values that you need to find out in every good literary text. Okay, and then he says that literary theories say that uh, you the piece of literature, okay, not the reader but the literature, should have some quality in the language. Okay, it means that some quality in the language should be there, so that you can connect language with literature. Okay, language will be such and so deeply organized, okay, so that language will become an inevitable essence of literature. That is important. Language should be such that it would be able to make that piece of literature a book of high value, a text of high value, in which the reader would be able to understand. Okay. And when you read literature, the success of a book lies in what it is trying to say, what it is trying to indicate. When the reader is able to exactly get what the writer is trying to indicate, okay, then that piece of literature is successful. Okay, but what the author is trying to indicate should not be direct. Directly, Shakespeare will not say, "I'm writing King Lear with the purpose of tragedy to show how King Lear falls into trouble by believing certain daughter and disbelieving certain daughter." No, he doesn't give you any explanation. He doesn't care to give you any judgment. Okay, but his lines are such, his language, use of language is such, his plot is such, the building up of his character is such that you clearly understand what he is trying to suggest. Okay. And then literary theorists also say, what is the work, what is the job of literary criticism? They say that the job of literary critic is to interpret the text. Okay. And to give a to build a bridge between author and reader. Okay, so literary theorists say the work of literary critic is to build a bridge between the reader and the text. That's all. Now, slowly we'll move into these different critics of different time, so that and their critical thoughts, so that you'd be able to um, connect, and you would be able to flow with the timeline of these critics, to be able to understand how they vary in their ideas, and then how they are also connected towards literature with their differing ideas. Now, first, very initially, we come to Plato. Okay, the first, he was not only a philosopher, but also he was a literary critic. Okay, he gave a lot of critical focus insight on literary works. Okay, now if you see Plato, um, his major work is called the Republic. Okay, the Republic. It is his major work, and in his book, The Republic, Plato gives his opinion about literature, his own opinion about literature. Okay, so you can say that this is one of the very initial book on literary criticism, because he gives his opinion about the whole body of literature. Now, in those days, literature was mainly poetry. Please do remember this. In those days, by literature they usually meant poetry. Okay, and Plato, as I told you, was also a philosopher. He tried to, in his work, The Republic, he tried to divide the state into three different classes. Oh, Tapas, you have joined?
Madam, I've joined. You continue. I'll take.
Tapas, give me, give. I'll be there till 7 o'clock, and then
Ah,
you can give me. Okay. Yes. I was talking about Plato. And now Plato, in his book The Republic, he talked about an ideal state. Okay, ideal state means how should an ideal society be. So he divided into different class. Okay, for the purpose of mere purpose of division of labor. So first, he says that there are three classes of people: the artisans. Artisans, as I told you, the menial workers. Uh, then the second class is the military, and the third class of people are the philosophers. Okay, and according to Plato, philosophers are supposed to be in charge of the ruling state. They have to rule the state. And what will the military do? The military will defend the philosophers. Philosopher will have only their ideas and plans and thoughts. Okay, and military are going to defend the philosophers and the whole setup, the whole state. And then artisan means they will help in the sustaining of the society. They will do different kinds of work, productive work, in order to contribute in the sustenance of the society. Okay, now according to Plato, artisans, okay, and military are different people. Okay, artisans and military, they have a huge contribution, but in contrary, these philosophers, they have different responsibility. Okay, and if there are poets coming up from these philosophers, okay, if any of these philosophers happen to be poet, then they should be exiled according to Plato. Okay, either they should be exiled poets, because he said that there is no place of these poets. If they are philosophers, they have to contribute towards the thinking process to give the idea for the betterment of the state. Okay, if they do not do that, if they are just poets, then either they should be exiled, okay, or their skill should be rechanneled to something else, something more productive. Poets have no place. Okay. But this was the initial opinion of Plato. But again, the state will gradually, you will see, mature to that level where poetry will be accepted. Okay, because initially, hymns, I think you know, hymns, hymns or Lord prayers made by Christians, they were also in the poetry form, in the poetic form to the God. Okay, but later you will find not only these hymns, but other poems were also included in the society. They also became a part of contribution from people. All right. But according to Plato, he was a little bit pessimistic about the importance of poet. Okay. Now, if you see the Republic, Plato's work, okay, interestingly, you will find the Republic is also in poetic form, in verse form. Okay. And so, does it mean that Plato is abusing himself only? Is he accusing himself? Because his own book is in the form of verse. Okay, and you know that Republic is not a hymn, it is not a God's prayer. Okay, nor is he trying to give a tribute to any king or queen. Okay, secondly, Plato is using the word ideal state. Okay, so ideal state is quite metaphoric. For ideal state means the state of mind of the virtuous man. Okay, so he ideal state, he did not mean the outer state, the physical state. No, he was actually trying to talk about the virtuous mind of the person. Okay. So here you see artisans in this way. Metaphorically, actually, he meant that artisans are actually standing for appetites. भूख जो पेट में भूख होता है वो artisans metaphorically stood for appetites. Military stood for the spirit, courage. Okay. Our philosophers were actually kings that stand for reasons. Okay. So this was exactly in his mind. These three things, which had symbolic meanings. Artisans stood for appetites, military people stood for the spirit, kings used to have reasons. Okay. So according to Plato, reason existed in order to change, in order to transcend the cheap things into spiritual things, the base things into exotic and sophisticated things. This is what actually he tried to say. Okay. Now, also you must remember Plato said that the actually he said that the nature of universe is imitation. Okay, I think you must have done this as you're saying you have already read certain things in literature. You must have read this as well, that according to Plato, the nature of universe is imitation, or it is also called mimesis. Mimesis. So you can see that. Plato was actually an idealist. Okay. He believed that reality has different layers. Reality, the truth hai, it has got different layers. So according to Plato, the topmost layer is based on ideas. Okay. And the lowermost level is based on imitation of those ideas. Okay. So according to him, reality has got different layers. Topmost layer are ideas, lowermost layer is the imitation of those ideas. Okay, so there is good, there is an imitation of goodness. Okay, so this is according to him is the reality of life. All right, and so he gives here one example. He says that suppose you are making certain thing, suppose you are trying to construct, or suppose you are trying to make a set of uh, you are trying to make a chair. Okay, now so in my house if I'm making a chair, some accident, some happenings took place and then the chair was made. Okay, but in your house you're making a chair, you did it very smoothly. So something happens due to certain accidents, certain happenings. Okay, this is what Plato has tried to talk. So he says that you know, all the chairs, if you say that your chair is not made up of with some accident, but in my place some accidents took place and then the chair was made. Okay, so there are different forms, different reasons in the highest element in the mind of a person. Okay, now if you take art, as I told you, it is the imitation, or the example that I gave you, it is an accident. Okay, something happened. Out of that, art was imitated and made and created. Okay, this was art according to Plato. Okay, so he said that art is therefore one step further from the good, from the true, from the beautiful. Beautiful is there, but certain happenings took place, certain circumstances happened due to which you created an art. So he says that art is not only the imitation but a better imitation. Okay. So he says that sometimes art is dangerous also, because when human beings they see art or they hear art, they also want to imitate that. Matlab imitation ka imitation they are trying to do, and therefore they are slowly gradually they are led away from the good, because it becomes a cheaper way of imitating art. Okay, art is itself an imitation and that is further imitated. All right, so that becomes a little little baser imitation. Okay, now I think I should stop here. Tomorrow I'll continue with all this. Mm, Tapas, are you going to take over?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
Okay.
tomorrow I'll start at the same time. Now I'm leaving. Over to you, Tapas. Thank you, Gracie.
Okay, good evening, Gracie. Gracie, can you hear me? Okay, okay. Gracie, can you put on your microphone?
Yes, good evening, sir. I can hear you, but due to the noise in my location, I wasn't able
Oh,
to
okay, okay.
turn on the mic for a long time. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
interacting
no
through the
problem. Gracie, I
messages.
would like to know you.
Yeah, yeah, I'm from Tripura.
You're from Tripura. Okay. And
Yes, sir.
Gracie, what's your background? Means you have studied your BA English or
Yes, yes.
okay,
I did my master's also in English, but I wanted to get an additional knowledge, and I wasn't satisfied with the kind of study that I pursued during the master's degree. So I found this PG course in modern English literature. So I thought this is a very good topic I should pick up.
okay,
So.
okay,
mhm. But for the additional studies, I enrolled in this program.
okay. So you have done your masters uh, from
Yes.
Tripura.
Yes. From
Okay,
IGNU. hmm
from IGNOU.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's nice. And what did you take? What were your papers that you had opted?
Um, um, the same that that we're going through right now. Uh,
Okay,
I
you
need
went.
to
You
turn off my mixer because there's a lot of noise around.
okay? Okay,
Can I?
fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So today we will be talking about um, new literatures in English. So first, we will be talking about the origin of this. So if you see, um, just a minute, just give me 1 minute. Yeah. So if you see the study of literature in English was produced by you know the non-Britishers, the non-British authors, and it was valued a lot uh, ever since it originated and of the cross-cultural contact between the colonizers and the colonized, who have not always been true. uh, for example, we can talk about Edmund Goss's valuation of the volume of Toru Dutt's poetry. Have you read about Toru Dutt? Gracie, can you hear me? You can message. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I was asking, have you read Toru Dutt's poetry? Okay, let me type there. But just a minute. Yeah. Have you read about Torudat? Okay, anyways. So, okay. So you find, Gose, you find in the 19th century, was a 19th century novelist, poet, and a biographer, and a critic reinforces the attitude of English men of letters who judged, works originating out of the peripheral colonial territories like India in this negative manner. But once he opens the hopeless, so-called hopeless, because talks about Torudat's poetry with a very says very, and it is a very unattractive appearance, a hopeless volume it seemed, with its queer tie, published at Bhawanipur, printed in Shaptik Sampad Press. So you find, once he opens this hopeless, you find the settings. He is talking about he's reflecting about the local setting, and from the 19th century to the middle of the 20th century, certain factors which contributed towards an interest in the study of literature from the erstwhile colonies, which many of whom had gained or were shortly to gain independence around this time. So these, together with the UK, comprised the British Commonwealth Association of Nations, differing greatly, amongst themselves, and yet, linked by the strong political, social, economic, and the cultural, even you can say the linguistic ties, arising out of a shared. And on these, you find was the creation of an English educated intelligentsia, who, by the very nature of their training, were steeped into the European traditions of dissemination and assimilation of knowledge. And this does not mean that they accepted it uncritically, but it implies that it is at least in some case the choice of the language for conveying their ideas carried a cultural baggage which was difficult to get rid of. So you find, there were many writers who were of that period, and the works they produced not only reflects, but it was talking about involving their country, and it was also questions were coming, it was criticized. So you find, language, English, if you say English, if we look at a broader sense, we create a linguistic code which has been transformed and subverted into several distinctive varieties throughout the world. So that is why we say it, English is a very it has a very standard code. So, the distinctiveness of these work contribute to the thematic, linguistic, and the formal, diversity of what came to be called new literatures in English. I hope you're getting me. Okay. So this is how new literatures in English evolved. So you find, the the Commonwealth literature, originated, and we find the tracing of the chronology of the events leading up to the establishment of the Commonwealth literature as a discipline. It's very common to ascribe the beginning of the universities in the United Kingdoms. So in the 1950s, you find some of the courses in the American, you find Commonwealth, Irish, and African literatures were offered. Okay, and you find the value judgment which implied in the word, what we call is provincial, is very unmistakably, and it is no wonder that. Um, so you find that. Um, You find Walter's survey, gives a new turn to this disjuncture between the metropolis and the periphery. The former, usually taken to refer to the origin center of colonial power, and the later, the regions over whom that power was exercised and continues, to be exercised in the neo-colonial forms. So you find London was in that period of time was the metropolitan center. Then countries, in Asia and or Africa colonized by the British, which were the outpost of the periphery of the British Empire. And you find the former is is as a cosmopolitan, and the later as a provincial is colonial discourse. So you might wonder how this applies to academia and to beginnings of the Commonwealth literature. But you find here the peripheral origin in the other universities in the UK um, are not, were not highlighted by Walder. So you find hence it is very useful to have another view of the origin, and you find. Hello, Gracie, can you hear me? Actually, my some problem. It's breaking in between. Yeah, okay. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me now? Is it clear? I changed my network. Hello. Can you hear me, Gracie? Yeah, okay. So I was talking about, the period how these new literatures in English, came into existence. So apparently you find, the newness which came into existence, and the Commonwealth, literary studies, which explained, which have been told, the Commonwealth, taking from the various parts of the countries. So here you find, Commonwealth literary studies took as their, objective the study literatures of the newly independent nations, and then you find the colonization is one form of, or the other, which was responsible for the use of English in their regions, which already, had an established tradition of orature, literature, and language other than, English. So you find English language literature, produced was new addition to, the body of literature which already existed in various languages in the country, like India, Kenya, Nigeria, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. And however, you find this is not how the, newness of such literature is perceived. But as in the term, when we talk about Commonwealth literature, the assimilationist model is at work in the term that is called the new literatures in English. And indeed, we find when discussing the, farmer, Rushid Rashti's voice of the suspension, that, quite possibly it is, he said that it is no more than an ungainly term for the younger English literatures. And you find when assimilated into the existing body of the English literature, you find that the universal human values, the new or the young literatures in English, all were perceived as enriching. And you find, even Bruce King, in his introduction to literature of the world in English, acknowledges, saying that there are the different national literary traditions with values and histories of their own, but each literature is a part of the world's English literature and share in, the heritage of British writing. So you find King's liberal, humanist critical stance fails to, mask the contradictions which inherent in the formulation. So we talk about, the values, the clearly the heritage of British writing, which has, valued markedly different from or other, national literary traditions, not, the least because a different set of materials you find is, and political conditions are in a very constitutive, of it. So we find that, in a later work which was entitled, um, by the king in 1980, saying, the title, the new English literatures, culture, a cultural nationalism in the changing world. So this was published in 1980, and this focuses on literature from. There were literatures from around six countries: India, Australia, Canada, West Indies, Nigeria, and New Zealand. And on the authors, from each place, authors were taken from all these places. But you find the recent European publication using the concept of the newness is very less inclusive, and you find the terminological inconsistency to abounds as a work which is edited and by Bindela and Davis, which entitled saying imagination and the creative impulse in the post-colonial literatures. You find an English series where while the collection includes a reading of the African, Indian, Canadian, Australian texts, and the editors are very firm about what was constituted as a new literature. Are you getting me? Am I hope you're getting. Yes. Okay. Okay. Now you see the literatures of Nigeria, India, and Zimbabwe um, were discussed a lot um, because they were new nations, those of Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. Uh, So you find, and these were the new nations as compared to Australia, Canada, New Zealand, because they have been populated by new immigrants. So that is why they were say new, and those literature were said to be new literatures. So the West Indies, fits both categories, since not only does its population comprise, those who are immigrants, but also because it has recently become a nation, or rather a federation of the nationalities. And you find the focus of the new lands which were inscribing themselves as on the imagination of emerging countries, make the emphasis on Canadian, Australian, and New Zealand, literature inevitably, which is why you find in mostly you find it was less inclusive as defined than the kings. Clear? Am I clear, Gracie? Okay. Gracie, do you have any? Are you getting me? Do you have any questions until this? I said, do you have any questions? Any more question? Any questions until this? Means the introduction of the new literatures. Okay. Okay. Fine. Fine. Okay. Now, what are the you find we find okay, okay, fine. So So you find the European critics have tried to, talk about the Commonwealth literature and the new literatures in English away from their, mere supplement of to, the British literature. So we talk about, the imagination and the creative. Impulse in the new literatures in English, which was called for a new integral model of organization, which would, take account of the comparative, contextual, and multicultural aspect of the subject. And thus, this was accommodating the, new literatures in a very reformed structural pattern of the international English language, sorry, literature. Okay. So we find that this purpose was, then, put in the collection of the essays in the mm, European Association for Commonwealth Literature and Language Studies, on the theme of nationalism versus internationalism. And then you find a lot of debate on this has happened, and a lot of critics have given their own, views on these particular topics. So you find when we are talking about enabling the post-colonial, the engagement, how the political theory, the theoretical politics was, based during that period of time. So you find there were many, there were many, the book, the Empire writes back the theory and the practice in post-colonial literatures, which made, the post-colonial the catchphrase in academic circles. And so you find there were, the foundational texts of the post-colonial theory is, the Edward Said's Orientalism, which was a brilliant account of the construction of the Orient by Western discourse. So you find Edward said had said that European culture was able to manage and even produce the Orient politically, sociologically, militarily, ideologically, scientifically, and imaginatively during the post Enlightenment period. And said work is a part of what, has now, come to be called as a colonial discourse analysis. So then you find the this textual, the oppositionalism can be, compared and contrasted with that of, Franz Fanon. Fanon, gives a description um, of the phases where, native cultural producers, go through in their relation with their, colonial culture, and a period of unqualified assimilation, followed by a stage in which, the native is disturbed and decides to remember what he is. And finally you find the fighting phase in which he will shake the people. So in the 50s and the 60s, Fanon wrote about the native absorption and the opposition to the colonial culture, as the other with reference to Algeria and Haiti. So you find this is a kind of, oppositionality, different from one generated by Edward Said's, enterprise of diagnosing how the West absorbed and, represented the Orient as the other in the 1970s. Okay, am I clear? Are you getting me? Yeah. So then, there was yeah, there were a lot of diasporic intellectuals also, like Homi Bhabha, Edward said, Gayatri Spivak, and they all attested to the institutionalization of the post-colonial theory in the Western, particularly in the U.S. Academia, and their origin in the third world, as well as their theoretizations about their own positionality, enable them to occupy a location which is comfortably marginal to the center. So that's how things work. So you find, one minute. So you find most you can see that Spivak is self-reflexive about her role as a investigating academic whose object of inquiry is the female subaltern subject, and it is no wonder that there is given the hierarchization, the conclusion drawn, is the subaltern which cannot speak, that one might add, and that she is spoken for the West by the academic mediators like Spivak, Gayatri Spivak. So, the this needs not, need not, take away from the value of such theoretizations, for they, do deal with issues of race, gender, class, and caste. Okay, so this is these post-colonial part, you must it's how it came up into a dimension. You see many of their anti-imperialistic critics, their these theorists, they all they draw upon the canonical the canonical texts by Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, then Kipling's Joseph Conrad, to name a few people like that. Okay, so we said, when I'm talking about the in reading, these works oppositionally to recover the suppressed voices in them, where whether the migrants, natives, or women, say Spivak or and said, add new dimension to the literary and the critical representation in this respect, that Bhaba's reading of work by Franz Fanon, Toni Morrison, Derek Walcott, and others, all they can be seen as an attempt towards establishing an alternative post-colonial canon, even though the aim is to dismantle the canons. So this is the introduction of the um, the what do you say, mm, the new literatures in English. I hope we are clear till this. Am I clear till this? Okay. So if there is a question, oh, if there's a question saying, analyze, talk about the new literatures in English as an advanced form of Commonwealth literature. So, what are the things that you would write? You can type in short. You can type. Yes. Okay. Yeah. 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 I've posted there. You can see. So you can just talk about yeah. What if this is a question? What are the points that you would touch? Yes. Yes, Gracie, are you typing? The how new literatures in English is a possible advance on the Commonwealth literature. And then I will sum up the you know how all these things what I said. I'm going to sum it up. Gracie, should I wait? Are you typing, or could you please unmute yourself and speak? Okay, so let me come to summing up. One of the issues you see, which is touched upon, you find um, you find it's the in the three major divisions. So you find is the of the canonization of the authors and the text. So since we are dealing with literature, this focus is very inevitable, and you find literature is not divorced from the social, political, or economic, you know, economic context, as it in which it originates. Okay, so we find that the term, you find the Commonwealth and post-colonial indicate these intersections. Okay, and Gracie has left. Okay, Divya Babu, Achanti ki?